Welcome to Module 5, where we'll be covering the due diligence process. Lesson 1 is all about asset valuation. Understanding how to value real property is an art and a science, but it's mostly a science. In other words, while there are some subjective considerations to valuing real estate, the use of relevant, comparable sales is primarily the tool for arriving at a true market value. This is because a property is worth what a buyer is willing to buy at and what a seller is willing to sell at. A full appraisal is when an appraiser visits the home, takes pictures, and measures and evaluates in person the condition of the home. But this is not how most values are arrived at in the note business. This is because the borrower is typically occupying the home. Or even if the home is vacant, there are some legal considerations to entering the home prior to the foreclosure in the case of a non-performing note. As a result, note investors typically rely on public data, and there are a number of ways to access that data for valuation. An automated valuation model, or AVM, is a desktop valuation. AVMs were frequently used in the late 1990s by institutions for assessing risk on collateralized mortgages. AVMs are used today as an inexpensive but sometimes less accurate methodology as compared to a broker price opinion, or BPO. With an AVM, nobody physically inspects the property, which is why it's called a desktop value. Now, a broker's price opinion is the process used by a hired sales agent to determine the potential selling price or estimated value of a property. And that sales agent is going to be out there in person doing what they call a drive-by. Let's discuss a few considerations when evaluating comparable sales or comps. You'll want to first confirm whether the list comps and the sales comps are relevant. This means evaluating the comps in terms of their proximity or how close they are to the subject property. Now, ideally, you're finding a model match in the neighborhood, meaning a comparison to another house that's just like the subject property. And you're also looking to identify any significant value changes that occur once you move beyond certain streets or neighborhoods. Now, a great example of this is when one side of the street has a view and the other does not. Or another example is when one side of the street is waterfront property, but the other is not. There are big differences there. You might also find there are unattractive elements on one side of the street, like maybe the house backs up to a highway or to an industrial area or power plant. That can really change the value. A great way to view this is online through aerial views with Google Maps or Google Earth, for example. You might also just use a local experienced agent to provide some local input. Let's learn how to apply this and actually evaluate an actual BPO. Let's talk about how to dispute the seller's value the right way. Some buyers simply tell the seller their value is off and they don't provide support. Now, this doesn't go over well in terms of convincing the seller they got the value wrong. However, if you can support the lower value by providing the BPO with relevant comps, it's hard for the seller to refute those objective findings. In this case, you're far more likely to have a productive conversation about where the loan should reasonably trade once everyone is in agreement on value. From there, you'll want to provide your reprice, or if you can't come to an agreement, simply suggest removing the file. Now, let's talk about another valuation method referred to as a desktop appraisal. Zillow is a desktop appraisal, and it's an online real estate company founded in 2006 that covers data for 110 million homes in the US across 130 MSAs, or metropolitan statistical areas. Redbell is another source. Redbell participates in nearly 400 MLSs throughout the nation and can quickly provide trending information and analytics to determine the value of a home. Other online sites for valuation services that are desktop appraisals would be homesnap.com, realtor.com, or moveup.com, and there are others. Now, a desktop review can be useful for getting a preliminary value and a feel for the neighborhood when you're looking at bidding an asset, but it's generally not sufficient for getting a final value. Now, another approach is to talk to multiple realtors that are familiar with the area. This can be very helpful. And you might also talk to a listing agent for a home that's on the market in the same neighborhood or preferably on the same street. Now, it's important to note that some realtors may inflate their estimate of value because they want the listing and they think that they'll get you more money as a seller and that'll help them get the listing. Other realtors may take the opposite approach and underestimate the value because they're sort of sandbagging it for an easy sale. And this is why getting the opinion of multiple realtors is key. So let's recap the key points on asset valuation. Valuing residential real estate involves subjective and objective factors, but it's heavily based on sold comparables, which would be the objective data. BPOs can provide a good sense for a property's value, but it is important to QC the data, which is about quality control, to make sure you've got the right comps. And there's a convenient desktop valuation methodology called an AVM, but one should really use that as a primary or preliminary valuation. That'll do it for this lesson. We'll see you in the next.